Welcome to the slow motion tutorial from shotondslr.com. I'm Casey, and today I'm going to show you how to make amazing slow motion. So, this is what we're going to make. So the thing about slow motion is you can do it a couple ways, and there's really only one way that will work and give you amazing slow motion, and that has to do with frame rates. But before I get into that, let me show you what I mean. So here we have a similar video, me throwing keys up and down in the air on a white wall, shot in 24 frames a second with the Canon 7D. And we'll just play through it here. Really exciting, right? So what I did was I just changed the speed to about 40% and said okay. And here's the same footage slowed down to 40% in Final Cut. The footage is slower, unfortunately. Check out what's happening. It's a little bit choppy. And by a little bit, I mean ridiculously choppy. Okay, so what it's doing basically is it only has 24 frames a second to work with here. And what it's doing is basically slowing that down, if you're at 40%, to about 60 frames a second. And that ends up adding about a frame and a half, or 2 frames for each frame. And so you see that there's not that great of an effect. And not to say that you can't do it this way. I see a lot of movies that do it this way, but the good movies that actually know what they're doing do it with a higher frame rate. See the difference? So here's the deal. The cool thing about the Canon 7D is it has all sorts of little ways to record a movie. Okay, we have 1920 by 1080, that's 1080p HD at 30 frames a second. Okay, and then there's same thing but at 24 frames a second, and then there's 1280 by 720, that's 720p. But you see here it says 60 frames a second. Okay, and we also have 640 by 480, also at 60 frames a second. So here's the thing. If you shoot at 60 frames a second, it comes out looking a little weird. Here's the video at 60 frames a second. Oh. Kind of weird looking. The thing about a higher frame rate is it looks unnatural. It looks, or maybe it looks more natural. I don't know, but it doesn't look the way you want it to. It looks kind of like a soap opera. It looks like daytime TV, which is not generally what you want your stuff looking like. You usually want it looking like awesome film goodness or something. But here's the advantage of shooting 60 frames a second, okay? So we have this weird looking 60 frames a second footage, okay? Which is right here. We can slow this down to 24 frames a second. And the cool thing about that is it gives us slow motion, but instead of giving us the choppy, weird-looking look, it gives us the awesome look. I call it the awesome look. This is something that's really, really easy to set up. So what we're going to do is use a program called Cinema Tools. And I'm going to open my file here. Here we have keys at 60p. And I'm going to duplicate this just for my reasons. Okay. So we have the 60p copy right here. Okay, and let's call this something so that we know what we have done. Okay, so let's call this slow. Keys 60p slow. I'm going to open this with Cinema Tools, which is going to pop up. Cinema Tools is a really cool program. If you haven't opened it ever, which before this I hadn't opened it ever, you should open it. And all you have to do for the 60 frames a second footage is hit this little conform button. And all this is going to do is tell it a different frame rate. Okay, and it's not even, it doesn't have to re-render. It doesn't have to do anything. All it's doing is changing the data in the file to say, instead of playing at 60 frames a second, play this movie at 23.98 frames a second, which is 24p. And I'm going to hit conform. And all it does is move the window over a little bit. I guess that's how it tells you that everything's okay. It couldn't use words, but whatever. Anyway, believe me, it's done. And so you can close Cinema Tools, and we will go to 60p slow. Remember, this is what our original footage looks like. And let's look at slow. And the awesome factor. There you go. Slow motion. And then after that, all you have to do is just bring it into Final Cut. It already knows how to play it. That's the cool thing. Make a new sequence here. And just throw it in here. Say yes. And there you go. Awesomeness. Thanks again for watching my tutorial, and make sure to check out more tutorials at shotondslr.com.